This was the reintroduction of ground effects into Formula One. It never really worked, and of course the penalty was they didn't get the success.
You're on board with Emerson Fittipaldi briefly, and this is lovely to see Emerson, who is a double Formula One world champion with two different teams, and Lotus was one of those teams. It's great to see him out there.
It is great to see him, and of course we just had that lovely shot riding on board with him. Another incredible piece of machinery, 3-litre V8. Scream.
Look at that.
Great shot, the iconic Fittipaldi helmet there as well, which still through his family, they're all the way through. He's still got quite a few Fittipaldis out there racing in the junior categories, and they all keep still to this iconic traditional Fittipaldi helmet.
As Emerson came into Formula One in 1970, won the USA Grand Prix in Watkins Glen that year, and then of course went on to take his first World Championship driving this car in 1972, and then backed it up. He left Lotus, joined McLaren, and won the 1974 Grand Prix World Championship for McLaren.
And he even got his first race win only on his fourth start, John.
Yes.
70.
I mean, he was a star prior to that in Formula 2, and before that, even in Formula 3. So he was the first of the wave of Brazilian drivers that came to Europe in the late 60s.
Alice, this is one of your favourites, isn't it?
This is my favourite. If there's any car that I could sneak home after the Festival of Speed, it'll be this one, the V10, screaming down. It always used to give me shivers when they'd all be lined up on the start line back when I used to go to Silverstone as a kid. Just listen to that sound.
Well, it was a dominant car, this one. It was very, very impressive. Won 15 Grand Prix from 19 races in 2002 and 2003. Really came into play in Brazil in 2002. And Michael Schumacher won 10 races with it. So it was a great time for Ferrari.
Well, not just a great time for Ferrari, but these cars, the 3.5-litre V10, the Ferrari and others around, were actually, if you look at the record, the lap records at some circuits, almost one or two remain having a lap record set in 2004 or 2005. Last night, talking to Jacques Villeneuve, he said they were the most powerful, 980 horsepower in a car weighing less than 600 kilograms. They make the current Formula One car look like not very quick.
Well, Felipe Massa is back out once again as well by the looks of things in the F2008, the season that he came so close to winning the championship, but he had that massive battle with Lewis Hamilton, and in the very final round of the series it came down to Lewis taking the title by 1 point from Felipe Massa. It was an amazing season. Felipe had 6 wins, and it was a very successful car, there's no doubt about it. But for Ferrari, it didn't quite work for them to win the Drivers' Championship. They did actually win the Constructors' Championship, though. But going back a bit earlier, John, we're back to the Tyrrell, of course. This was a crucial time for Sir Jackie Stewart.
Yes, Jackie joined Ken Tyrrell effectively in 1968 when they ran the Matra, the first Matra with the Cosworth engine in it. Then in the 69 version was a much more sophisticated car, and that led to Sir Jackie winning his first World Championship. The Tyrrell was only introduced at the end of 1970 because the team ran a March, and this is in effect that car that the Tyrrell team ran. So another World Championship for Jackie in 1971, following it up with the final World Championship win in 1973. What I think is interesting is the Tyrrell wasn't necessarily the fastest car in a single lap in a qualifying, but Jackie understood how you win races, and more importantly, how you put a championship together, and that's largely why the Tyrrell team and Jackie Stewart were such a powerful force in Formula One.
So, heading up the hill now is the Lotus Cosworth 79, and it is Mario Andretti who took the title himself. We will be celebrating more with him later on. And again, some great onboard shots. We can listen into the wonderful sound, the brilliant ground effect. This was when ground effect was created by Colin Chapman and the team, and they really delivered it beautifully well. Those side pods, so well designed.
Yeah, this was a seismic leap forward in technology in Formula One. Initially, people didn't recognise that the downforce was so great being generated by the tunnels under those side pods. Lotus very cleverly tried to disguise it by, as soon as the car came to a standstill, they'd throw a rug over the back of the car, over the transmission. leading everybody to believe they're doing something very tricky with that part of it. But the truth was, everything that was responsible for this car's performance was left in clear sight. But everybody focused on the transmission and the gearbox.
Yeah, wonderfully done, and it's some wonderful shots of Mario Andretti making his way up the hill and taking the title that year. His career was remarkable because it wasn't just taking the championship in Formula One. He raced in the United States in all forms of motorsport, building his way up to single-seaters, multiple winner of the IndyCar Series. He only won the Indy 500 one time. He was a bit unlucky because there were several times it looked like he was going to win it.
Yes, Mario was one of those drivers that you would describe as one of the most versatile race drivers. He could jump into basically anything. You know, a NASCAR running around Daytona, an IndyCar running around Indianapolis, a World Sports Car around Sebring around Daytona, at Le Mans likewise. But of course, you mentioned at Indianapolis, that one single victory would maybe be a disappointment because technically Mario should have won many more of the Indy 500 events.
And Nigel Mansell, of course, another absolute superstar from the world of Formula One, and in that beautiful Williams, he's in the FW11, and he's really enjoying himself. Little way he goes.
This car is not really known as its designated brand. It's known as Red 5. That was Nigel's race number, and the bright red number 5 at the front of the nose. There you see it coming into view. Always known as Red 5. Nigel was an outstanding race driver, and he just dragged performance out of this car. He had a very tough teammate in 1987 with Nelson Piquet, and Piquet won that championship. Nigel had to wait until 1992 when the active ride version came along. Patrick Head and the team at Grove or Wantage, one of the two, perfected an active ride suspension, and that's ultimately the title that became Nigel's in 1992.
Absolutely, yes. So this was the car that didn't quite work for him for winning the title that particular year, but it was still very, very significant. That tyre failure in the last race in Australia, that's what cost him. It did look as though he was going to win the championship that year. A lot of people expected Nigel to become champion that year, but it didn't quite work out. James Vowles, I gather, is in this next car. This is the FW14B from that period that Nigel did win the championship, and it's the team boss, James Vowles, who is currently in the car. That's rather fun to see.
Yeah, I could hear him getting a bit of a mix, getting the gears, because James is quite a tall guy. There's not a lot of room in the cockpit, and the gear changes down low. I'm not sure, did this have paddle gear shifts on it? Anyway, James Vowles, current team principal at Williams Formula One, doing a good job. I mean, he's not sparing the old horsepower, is he?
No, he's having a bit of fun, and it's nice to see. And of course, for these F1 team personnel, current team personnel, who are working really, really hard, of course, throughout the course of the season with a 24 racing championship, to be here at Goodwood on a kind of weekend off, but being able to enjoy driving a Formula One car which has such great history. What a lovely chance.
They're all just motorsport fans, aren't they? So they're so keen to come along and take him. We've seen him go up in a Porsche, and they're all walking around hugely interested in the cars, which I think is fantastic to see. And back to another iconic Ferrari, who's a bit too keen on the throttle pedal, but hopefully will be able to hone in and hear the screaming, John, as you're waving at the screen, all excited.
Well, it's Joe Macari driving it. Joe Macari, better known as the purveyor of high-class quality GT cars. If you want to buy a car, get hold of Joe Macari. He'll be here all weekend. But Joe races himself. But, you know, driving a Formula One car up the hill at Goodwood, again, so much horsepower available, not too much tire temperature in spite of the high ambience. So, yeah, Joe is enjoying himself and maybe realising, fulfilling a dream to drive a Grand Prix Ferrari up the hill climb here at Goodwood.
One of my favourite V10s, again, makes its way up. But it was a mixed one for Ferrari, wasn't it, the 1999 season, Ben?
Yeah, it was. They got the Constructors' title. It was competed by Michael Schumacher and Eddie Irvine, but Michael had his accident at Silverstone, and Eddie Irvine was then under the pressure to do it. It didn't quite work out for him. Now, more modern Alpine, of course. We've seen this out a few times. Paul Aron, the youngster, who got a chance to do FP1 at Silverstone last weekend, and now he's on show for Alpine here. Fun to see.
It is. Had a tough season, but they did have some highlights back in 2023. Of course, there was the podium for Esteban Ocon, who's here this weekend out driving the Haas at the Hill. We've previously seen him out already today. Gasly, of course, at Zandvoort, that crazy mixed weather race. So they had flashes of promise, but just pretty much lack of consistency for that season.
Absolutely, but lovely to see one of these more modern machines from 2023, and I'm sure many of us will have watched it on the screens and see just what's been going on. These much bigger machines, but of course they are so rapid as well and demanding to get all of the performance out of them. But Red Bull, of course, have had such great heritage, great success in Formula One. They're having a bit more of a tough time at this stage in the season, but some of their historical cars, where they took those 4 titles with Sebastian Vettel in the into the 2010, 11, 12, 13, when Sebastian Vettel was able to dominate that period, and for Red Bull it was absolutely crucial to have that success. Looking at the RB7 here, this is the 2011 version that we're enjoying, and Patrick Friesacker at the wheel of this one. That was the one that he took his 2nd title, Sebastian Vettel, very dominant with 12 wins in the 19 Grand Prix, 27 podiums, and I think he took the driver's title that year by about 122 points, I gather, from Jenson Button, who was 2nd.
Yeah, I mean, again, this car powered by a Renault V8 engine, and Renault are such an important partner to Red Bull at this time in their Grand Prix history, and did an amazing job. And they produced, I think most people would agree, in the paddock, the most complete Formula One engine of that era.
Well, that's lovely to see. And of course, for Formula One of the key aspects of a great car is great designers. Adrian Newey, very much a part of Red Bull, but another great designer in Formula One, but then going on to other things as well, is Gordon Murray. We are celebrating Gordon Murray quite a lot this weekend, and there are some machines from Gordon Murray. Look at this, ready to come up the hill in a moment. And there you are looking at the first ever car he created, which was for his own racing. And yes, it looks like a Lotus 7 or a Caterham as they became later on, but actually this was the first car that he created as he was thinking about going racing himself. In the end, he didn't actually become a racer. He became one of the greatest ever designers.
Not just a designer, a great innovator as well. And some of the cars that Gordon Murray penned for the Brabham team and then more latterly for McLaren are stand-out race machines. And I think the initial Brabham BT42 with its triangulated chassis, then moving forward to the BT46, the fan car, couldn't beat a Lotus 79 with aerodynamics, so they came up with a fan concept, something that, again, Chaparral, we've heard that mentioned, produced. And the fan was driven by the gearbox, and it's very important to remember the primary purpose of the fan on the back of that BT46 was to cool the engine. But nobody in the pit lane in Sweden where the car raced believed a single word of it. But Gordon Murray got legal advice from 2 QCs unequivocally. The purpose of the fan is to cool the engine.
Yeah, and this is what this area is all about. Ready to celebrate again, of course. There is Gordon Murray. Lovely to see him as with a smile on his face.
And with Stella. Stella's been with Gordon, I think, since they both came over from South Africa. And, I mean, a great partnership. And they are actually wonderful hosts if you're ever invited to their home just outside Godalming.
Yeah, so they are heading up towards that area now, and you're seeing this mixed combination as they head up. Ex-Formula One cars and then these beautiful supercars. He created what was called the McLaren F1, but it was very much a road car, the 3-seater road car with the driver in the middle and the passengers on either side. So much to celebrate for Gordon Murray. A lovely look back at some of the history of Gordon Murray, the man who built his own machinery initially, which you can just see there in the front section of our images. But that was from then, when he moved from South Africa to the UK. He got taken up by Bernie Ecclestone to get involved in preparing Formula One cars, and it was seen very quickly that he had the ability to make some incredible ideas, and he developed some wonderful cars that went on to take championships. Then, as you said, John, moving on to McLaren in the late 1980s, and then once he'd been involved in some vital F1 cars, and then getting into the supercar side. And there we are celebrating both of those. The Brabham is the lower car up there, and then above that's the T50, of course. Gordon Murray Automotive, that is a key part of his current life. And here we are celebrating everything that he has achieved. Well, some lovely shots, some celebration time here, Bruce. Goodwood always do an amazing job with this.
Astonishing. I mean, fireworks for a man who really was a disruptor, who had fireworks of his own. I mean, two of those cars, that T50 at the top from Gordon Murray Automotive, and below the pencil-thin Brabham. He certainly produced some beautiful cars, but most effective of all, a beautiful car is one that succeeds Watty, and of course he had an awful lot of that.
Yes, indeed. I mean, the success Brabham enjoyed really from the point, from the BT44 particularly, that was introduced in 1984, sorry, 74, not even 84, 74. Then the BT45s, the BT46, leading all the way through to the BT49C. That was another great car, which Nelson Piquet enjoyed a World Championship victory in. Then the road cut. But for me, the thing about Gordon is just a Formula One person. His interests are music being one of the principal interests. I don't know anybody who's got a bigger bootleg collection of Bob Dylan albums than Gordon Murray.
That's lovely to know. But you worked with him, didn't you, John, when you were competing in Formula One? How was it to work with him?
Very easy, because Gordon is a non-complicated in the sense of somebody who, if you wish, understood what he had created. Remember, this is not about modern CAD-CAM design. This is done on a full-scale drawing board. And the information that the driver gave to the engineer was fundamental to how the progress made. But I think to the things like the BT46 fan car, that took Gordon Murray's imagination to a new height. To come up with that concept, just unreal.
Yeah, he came up with some remarkable machinery. In the fan car you're talking about, if it had been allowed to continue, it would have no doubt gone on to win the championship that year, but Bernie Ecclestone did agree that it was going to be pulled out.
Yeah, I mean, it was Bernie's decision to withdraw the car. The car was never banned. It was withdrawn voluntarily by Bernie. Now, I'm sure Gordon might not have been too happy about it, but there was a bigger picture that Bernie was looking at, and that bigger picture was the future of the whole of Formula One as an entity, that it was going to move. But Gordon and Brabham won that race in Sweden.
Well, today we're not just celebrating, of course, Gordon Murray, although it is a big moment to have that celebration now. We're also looking at the wonderful history of Formula One that powered him up. Well, I'm sure when he was growing up, getting involved in it, watching it, seeing what was going on with some of this machinery as well.
Bernie actually owned a Mercedes W125 in his own pride, which is just recently been sold to the heirs of the Red Bull empire.
Yes, indeed. He had something like 69, didn't he?
He did. You would have seen some of them stored in a place not too far from here, but very special cars, and I'm absolutely adoring the show, the history lesson being unveiled here. And again, it's always when you get drivers driving cars they haven't driven before, getting to experience what was like in an earlier decade, and sometimes it's something their parents said to them, but it's been a fantastic run. What an education. 75 years of the Formula One World Drivers' Championship. We're the beneficiaries here today at the Festival of Speed.
Yeah, we really are. We are enjoying much action, seeing so many stars, seeing cars.